Jesus, all the way. I'll forever trust in you. Jesus, all the way. JC 24/7.
A 78-year-old woman entered a bus on the way to her destiny, only to find that the bus was full to capacity. A young man, seeing her plight, decided to get up and give her his seat. Shocked at this display of courtesy, she fainted. When she came to after a few minutes, she was able to mutter the words, "Thank you, young man," and then he fainted. Is this any indication of where our society is today? Are manners and customs some things of the past, or are they still relevant today? Well, today we continue our series on old-time days, and we would examine whether these old-time ways are relevant for our days, even today. And we have invited just the right panel to help us unravel this enigma of manners and etiquette. Manners maketh man. Thank you, brother and sister John, Gideon, and Subiana. And I want to start with you, Gideon. Sure. When I was growing up, heard about this whole thing about manners and etiquette in the form of one cute statement: manners maketh man. How true is this? Or how true was this? And is it still relevant?
Well, I must confess that when I was growing up, I met there also.
Okay, good.
So I was
you're not too far apart.
I was not part of the origin of that statement. So
okay.
What I will say is what I interpret it to mean.
Right.
And maybe one of the challenges that we have is that people do not pass on explanations. They just pass on information.
I hear you.
So that manners maketh man, I think, speaks to, as a person,
right.
If you are to be a true man, what is described to be a man, somebody that is beneficial to society, and of course women, then the small things that you do are really what makes you.
Okay.
And therefore you are made up of smaller components as opposed to just one big lump.
Okay.
And therefore the courtesies are those foundational, smaller components that really make a productive person.
Okay.
And I think that is what they mean when they say manners make it.
Just for the record, we are not talking in masculine terms. We're talking in generic terms.
Generic, yes.
So, Vienna, so do you think it's still relevant? Manners maketh women too?
I think somebody says that manners make us human. So that if you really, if you know, to put a spin on it, it really doesn't only speak to manhood, but it speaks to personhood.
I hear you.
So that it will really, it makes us who we are.
Okay.
You know, not animals or, you know, but with a little more finesse, manners will add that.
So are you saying that if I am not groomed by manners, I am not yet a person?
No, you wouldn't be.
Well, I know of a couple that would have been exposed to this phenomenon of manners maketh man. Brother and Sister John, thank you for joining us. Maybe you could help us reflect on some of these old-time ways, old-time days, these forms of etiquette that may have become extinct even today.
Yes, and I would say when I was growing up, I thought that was a word that belonged to the home because before I could even understand words, I would hear this statement. It was like a motto, manners maketh man. And by that, we understood that we had to have a certain sort of a way of life. It became like a custom. And so like somebody visit our home, and we are doing chores in the midst of our parents, we had to take an exit. By the look of an eye, we understood that we should be taking another side, as it were.
I tell you.
And so we understand that manners maketh man. You have to have some manners. Visitor is here, you are not allowed to stay to even participate in the conversation.
I tell you.
So those are some of the things. Good morning. Miss so-and-so. And those are some of the things that I learned as in my time.
Brother John, you want to add
Much
to that?
more, but I would leave it for somebody else.
Also, around our time, you do not, when you meet a senior person, you say good morning. You don't wait on them to say good morning.
Okay.
And you, whether you know their name or not, you say good morning, miss, or good morning, sir. You have been taught this, and this is taught at the home. Because since the parents are the first teachers, the child will have the responsibilities on the home or the parents to ensure that they instill these disciplines in your children, because as they go out, they're extensions of the home. So it speaks a lot. It speaks volume.
Okay. What about eating habits and stuff like that?
Right.
Could you raise that point? The first place I learned to use a knife and fork was at my home.
I tell you.
And my mom had a way of showing you how you must hold the fork and knife. Because today I go out and I see some people don't even know which hand the knife belongs.
Okay.
You hold your knife in the right and the left, and she had a way of pointing this finger on the top of the fork.
Okay.
And you hold your knife in a certain way.
That's irrespective of which hand you use.
Yes.
Well, yes. Yes.
Okay.
If you're a left-hander, obviously, but in my home there were no ambidextrous persons.
Okay.
You know, so we learn that style. The way you even eat, if you're chewing, your posture at the table, that was a prerequisite. That was a manner. There was a manner in which you should sit.
Right.
There was no slouching, she would say.
Okay.
You sit upright, and you have that form, a certain style, and that's what manners. I looked at the word and I said, it said style.
I tell you.
So she was a lady of style.
Okay.
So you had to be a person of style.
Very good. So, Brianna, were you exposed to any of these customs?
Much less, but I could remember my father teaching us to eat with knife and fork.
Okay, at least.
And chewing with your mouth closed. You couldn't let it hang all out. You had to keep your mouth closed and chew. And I remember it was a sticking point, because even if we used a spoon, there was a particular way that you had to shovel the food in, for want of a better term. You couldn't put food to meet more food. You had to chew the food a certain amount of times before you could put another spoon of food in, so that, those things.
You still obey those?
Yes, I do. I actually eat very slowly.
On national television and all.
Yes, I do. I eat very slowly as a result of, the upbringing.
Gideon, you want to add to any of this list?
Yeah, well, there are some that people refer to as more customs and so on, but you have like they wear the cap in the house.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't whistle in the house because it symbolizes authority.
And then were we told that women ought not to whistle at all?
Yeah.
I heard something like that,
I
still you got away. What about opening up door for the woman and that type of thing?
Oh,
the car
yeah. Well,
that might be along the line of etiquette, but
Yeah. Well,
it is still something.
Yeah. Well, my father, was big on how you treat ladies. So we could not have gone out and come home with the girls still outside.
I tell you.
You had to leave and find them.
Well, when she could walk herself, what's wrong?
Well, that was just his way of showing that we need to protect our ladies.
There you go.
And we couldn't raise our voices, even in joke. Even in joke, we could not have raised our voices.
Okay.
And we just had to apologize. And what you have to do, say it quietly, say it decently. You can't shout. You can't. The boys maybe, but not the girls. You couldn't do it to the ladies.
Okay. So John,
I remember I was 18 years old, and I was being taken to a wedding, and my uncle, with whom I was staying at one time, the car came, and I was anxious to go out because, being at home sometimes you're restrained. And so I was anxious to go out, and this gentleman, who was about twice time my age, I was 18, and I was rushing out, getting in the car, and the young man, he said, give me a minute. I was going to open the door, and he said, let me open the door for you. The same thing happened. I was getting out. Again, I forgot. I mean, these values were instilled in me, but I forgot, and I was getting out because it was time for party for me.
Okay.
And so he said, may I? And so these values are no longer.
Okay.
Today,
if you sit down there waiting, you'll be waiting still.
Exactly. Yes. I remember when we got married, my husband did these things.
Oh, he did
for
it?
me.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean,
okay.
you know, these are values.
How important? Because some people hearing you would say, okay, big deal. I mean, the woman could open the door for herself. That's why they have a handle on that side of the door. How big, how relevant, and how important were these forms of etiquette?
It was very important. It's a matter of courtesy.
Right.
Right? It is expected that a man should be very courteous towards a woman. I remember traveling on the bus, and there was this older woman. I'm old now, but she was older, much older than me. And I got up and offered her my seat, and she told me no. She didn't want it. She stood up.
I tell you.
So when you are greeted with something like that, should it affect you? Or should you continue to extend these courtesies?
Okay.
You have to.
All right.
Because it has been instilled in
That's
us.
right.
You have inculcated
That's
these
right.
principles, and you just have to do it.
Okay.
So this is something that we have to really teach our children,
Okay.
that they can continue it in spite of the responses that they may get.
Okay. And you're not doing it simply to please the other
No,
party, but because it's part of your whole makeup.
Right.
Okay, we have to take a break now. When we come back, we look at the whole question of the handle to the name and if there's any relevance to that. You're viewing JC 24/7. We are treating with the whole question of manners and etiquette. It gets even better when we shall return.
JC 24/7.
These days, we have to make do with what we have. Fortunately, I enjoy fixing things, like this old lamp. It's been in our family for 20 years. Sometimes old things are the best, like old-fashioned family values, faith in God. They have brought our family through some pretty tough times. Old things, old family values. Something you can depend on.
This message of love has been brought to you by your friends, the Adventists.
JC 24/7.
Welcome back to Manners and Etiquette. And I tell you, we are being exposed to some of the old-time ways and their relevance. And before we get to a specific question regarding handle to your name, Sister John, you were about to respond concerning the relevance of manners and etiquette even in 2013.
Yes, and I was saying it's still relevant because it augurs for decorum, professionalism. In this day and age, you're hearing people are referring to people by the name Kamla, or you might hear Janice, or those things are not required when you are acting professional. In a social activity, fine. But when you have to do something and be where it requires professionalism, then you find it is relevant.
How does it help the society?
It helps society in the way that people will respect, there should be respect for each other. And understanding that will help you through life, because the way you were brought up, it shows in the end the product. The product of good manners and etiquette.
So I can disagree with you, but in a respectful manner.
In a respectful manner.
I don't have to disrespect you to bring across the point.
Exactly.
Sure, definitely.
We had a social setting in a military barracks. A corporal called a major by his first name, and he was pulled up by the sergeant major. Immediately. Who is Carl? And immediately he had to come to attention. The point is, we need to respect people no matter where we are. There are certain things that are given, and we must observe that at all times. And that is why, in etiquette, there must be a form of discipline. There must be, because you must instill these discipline so that they can be carried out. That is why I believe in the wise man. Because he said, train up a child in the way he should go, that when he's old, he will not depart.
And of course, if you have to train somebody, you have to be trained as well.
Exactly.
So it trains you to be trained. That's right.
So we must lead by precept and example. So this is where parenting, that's why things are falling now, because the children, their parents, they don't know how to parent. So everything is going down. So somebody has to bring it back.
And I want to take you up on that, Sister John, because you mentioned about the glib reference to Kamla, and I'm using Kamla, that's what you said. But we get the picture that we refer to people as callous as we possibly can imagine. Is there any relationship, therefore, between how we are treating one another and the crime rate that we experience today? Is there a direct or indirect link? Brother Gideon?
Well, I think there is.
Sorry, Brother St. Bryce.
I think there is, because when you respect a person's position, you respect a person, then the way you treat with that person is going to be based on that respect. And for you to disrespect somebody's property, when you disrespect somebody's life, and I'm not saying disrespect in the context that the gang leaders speak of disrespect.
I hear you.
I'm talking about understanding that people are people, and understanding that really and truly we are here. If we understand the context of real success, we are here to reflect the character or the image of God in whom we were created. And therefore, we respect life in itself and every person that represents that life and that creation. And when we come to understand that, then we treat people differently. And if we have lost sight of that, then the way we can take a life, or the way we can take away someone's property and so on is really a reflection of we have lost the respect for people and what that life represents.
So, Biana, do you think our young people have an understanding of some of these forms of etiquette? Do they consider it being irrelevant, or are they totally oblivious? In your mind, in your opinion?
I have to say some people don't think it's relevant anymore because of how the society has become. People they are not very high expectations of people anymore. So that at one point, people expected you to say good morning and good afternoon. Now people, they overlook it. If you don't say it, then it's okay, then it's not necessary. So that you find young people at this point would tend to think that if I do it, whether I do it or not, it really doesn't affect anybody because the society doesn't hold anybody to a high standard anymore.
Okay. It's
So
almost
that-
like, not to cut you, but almost like when you walk into a maxi and you say good
Yeah.
morning or good afternoon.
And nobody answers.
And that's supposed to be the norm.
Yes.
It has become the exception.
Right.
You know.
Something like that, so that
okay.
people tend to think that because nobody's doing it, then why should I bother?
Okay.
And I would like to believe that young people have manners.
Okay.
Right? I just think that I would like to believe that,
Okay,
right?
okay,
That young
okay.
people have manners, but
You have manners?
of course, but they are not put. The manners are not being put to the test
I
anymore
hear you, right.
because people don't necessarily expect them to
Okay.
display those manners.
Okay.
So that to me is why people disregard
Okay.
using them as they should.
Is there something about your society or the society which you lived or grew up in, Gideon, that may have contributed to the stability that we are lacking today? For instance, I think you may have spoken to the whole issue of the work week and the rush and the hustle that we experience. Maybe borrowing from what Sobiana says, is it that we have it, but it's dormant?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that more things are caught than taught.
Okay.
So that you cannot lecture somebody into becoming mannerly
Okay. Or legislated.
or legislate it.
Okay.
Thou shalt say good morning, or thou shalt spend 20 days.
Or else.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And therefore, the amount of time that you spend in the company and the environment of persons who are exhibiting these kinds of values that you want to see and inculcate, then the more it is that it will be displayed by more and more persons.
Okay.
And family time, therefore, becomes important.
Right. Okay.
And the world that we live in now doesn't really subscribe to family time.
That's interesting.
So I remember when we had the half day on Thursday, shops is closed on a Thursday.
What year are you talking about, sir?
When I was a child.
That's before my time.
Yeah, not too long ago. No, I'm not
Okay,
an old man.
okay.
Don't try that, Pastor. And the general work week really was Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, and therefore families could have planned family time, and they
Okay.
could have spent time after the work day together, go to the picnic, go to the football game, go and watch some cricket.
Okay.
That doesn't really obtain now.
Right.
And so, because more things are caught than taught, we don't have much time for people to catch things from
hear
their
you.
parents and
Okay.
from those things. So
Okay.
people are just left up to be.
What about the old adage, you make your child, but you don't make their mind? If somebody were to throw that at you, how true is that? And how relevant is that?
Well, I don't subscribe to that.
Okay.
I think there comes a time in the life of any person in growing up that they make their own decisions. But I think that there are some things that parents have to take responsibility for.
Okay.
And your child saying good morning, your child understanding that there's an authority and you have to respect authority and so on. I think those are parental responsibilities.
Okay.
And if the children do not display it, my personal opinion is the parents must be held accountable for those things.
And if the parents do not know about it, how do we bring it back, Sister John? How do we bring back these values? Maybe reculturize the society, if you like.
Right, and I was saying that it takes a village to raise a child.
And that was in your time, and it's true today as well.
Yes. And you still hear people say it,
Right.
but are we practicing it? And
Okay.
so therefore, there should be we have community efforts. And if we, through the community efforts, will pass on some of these old-time cliches that we hear and make it meaningful by acting
Right.
and passing those things on to younger ones. And I want to tend to agree with Sobian when she said that the young people know that they should do certain things, but some of us adults do not encourage
tell
them
you.
by showing them the way.
Wow.
And so it's relevant right now that we bring these things to the forefront through our community efforts. You hear about so many community efforts, but what are they doing? You see past sometimes on weekends and you see people on the beach, they are subject to partying. These things are not relevant in their maintaining a family relationship. People go out and have fun. That's what they do, but they are not passing on these things that will make people become professional in their attitudes and to ascertain respect and honoring those who are to be honored.
It speaks about the whole question of mentoring.
Mentoring, yes, that's the word.
Okay, Brother John, how important is that?
The church has a part to play in this, because let's assume the child is from a home where there are no parents. Right? This is where the church membership needs to chip in and mentor that child.
Okay.
Right? A brother can adopt one of the brothers in the church or a daughter and treat them as your own. And as you do that, you try to teach them the basic things that will take them through life, because they are growing. They're a part of the society, and in a while they'll be out to look for a job, to get in the business world. So there are certain things that they must inculcate before they get to that point. And this is where we come in the church to help those people who did not have these parenting skills or who wasn't exposed to that in their homes.
So as adults, we must bear in mind that what we say and do does have a corresponding impact, not only upon our children, but generations to come.
Yes.
Because if the baton is dropped now, nobody would even know there was a baton. I know. So it's important. You know, the Bible is very strong on etiquette and customs and mannerisms that will help us to become disciplined and respectful of humanity. For instance, guests were treated as sacred. So it was important for you to treat and honor your guest when they do come. The washing of the feet when they come through the dusty roads. There's a case in the book of Genesis where Lot actually wanted to exchange his daughters for the guests that came. It was his way of showing honor to the guest. Imagine that. You know, and we know the story, how gruesome it was. But it was a critical part of their lifestyle, discipline, honoring and respecting, which is part of the fifth commandment, I believe. Honor your mother and your father. All right, we want to wind up. What part is God playing all of this? How can God help us to enforce this whole question of manners and etiquette? Is God a mannerly person? Is God somebody who believes in that? Does he show us any form of etiquette?
He's definitely a God of order.
Okay.
And a part of manners and discipline really helps you to conform to the society where you have been brought up or where you live now, so that if God cannot be left out of the equation, because if you believe in God and if you believe that he would have ordained certain things to happen, then your lifestyle must be a reflection of those things, so that you can't say that you're a Christian really and not display social graces, because it is an indictment on what you profess to be.
Strong language used here is an indictment. So John, we're wrapping up now.
Yes, humility. And because those of us who are talking about professionalism, decorum, we would have learned this pattern. And so therefore we are going to be bringing that out to the rest of those who do not know. God is in your life, and therefore these humility comes because you believe that there's someone supreme. And if you are following the example, therefore it tends and make you become humble and willing to pass on some of these characteristic traits.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so sorry that time ran out. Or you want to say a final thing before we go?
Well, I think God in your life is what gives you this selflessness.
Yes.
And gives you that focus. And to me, that's what manners is about. Understanding that this world does not exist for me alone. It's about other people living with me.
Amen. Thank you so much. You know, Philippians chapter 2 says it all. Jesus being in the form of God did not count robbery to be equal with God. In other words, he had the most number of stripes, and yet he became like man to show honor and respect for humanity that had gone so far away from him. If he can do it to us as his people, certainly we can do it to one another. Let us show respect for humanity. Let us show courtesy, for indeed manners and God maketh man. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you once again on JC 24/7.